Hello and welcome to stage 2 of the Giro Rosa as we bring you daily highlights here at Vox Women in partnership with Trek. Well, we've certainly got an exciting day to look forward to, but first let's take a quick look back at how things kicked off yesterday. The 2019 Giro Rosa got underway with the team time trial from the beautiful town of Cassano Spinola. After some of the smaller Italian teams had set the ball rolling, it was the turn of the major trade outfits to see who could set the fastest time. In the end, it was the German Canyon SRAM quartet which finished fastest over the 18-kilometre undulating course. Bigla Pro Cycling was second, over 20 seconds back, with the podium rounded off by CCC Liv. So it was Kasia Niewiadoma who donned the first pink jersey in Fausto Coppi's hometown of Castellania.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud of my teammates and of the entire team because everyone did an amazing job. Everyone was giving their best actually and like pushing all of their limits, and we had this goal to win this stage, and it was extremely motivating to see everyone suffering and really believing that we can achieve that. And yeah, we suffered together, we won together, so I just wish that we had 6 more jerseys, pink jerseys, so we could wear it all together. And yeah, that was an amazing day. I still cannot believe what did happen, but that's the beauty of winning the race.
And once again, I've got Alice Barnes alongside me in the studio. Firstly, let's just talk a little bit about Kasia. Very delighted there, smiling as we see so often, but she mentioned the focus. There's a long way to go.
Yeah, I think wearing the pink jersey has always been a dream of hers, and yeah, it's always an honour to wear the leader's jersey of a race, but I think, yeah, she's really got to stay focused. I think she has mentioned she's not going for the GC, but maybe that's just take her mind off it a bit and then just look at the stage wins and take it day by day, because she can never really look too far into the race.
When you do take a leader's jersey in a situation like that and it's early on and you go back to the team hotel at the end of the day, is there room for that reflection and celebration, or is it just focusing on the next day and recovery?
Yeah, I think you've always got to take time to appreciate what you've just done. It was a really impressive ride from all the riders, and I think they can really be proud of it and use it as motivation for the rest of the week, and yeah, keep the spirits high in the camp, and yeah, really enjoy that victory.
And what can you tell us about spirits on the ground there, because I assume you caught up with Hannah last night?
Yeah, they were all really happy. She was really happy as well, and I know for all teams, just to have a stage win in a stage race is really important. It takes a little bit of pressure off, and then you can really focus on just doing your best in each stage, and hopefully that will turn out with more stage wins for the team.
Certainly. Well, one of the teams that had some frustrations out on the road yesterday are indeed one of the biggest teams in the race, Trek Segafredo. I think we can hear from their team DS, Giorgia Bronzini, now.
We're going to be in the game. We're going to see how the other team are playing, and we're going to adapt to some other tactic. We're going to see. We have a good team here. They are all in a good shape. Yesterday we had a bit of bad luck in a team time trial, so I think the girls are a bit angry for this against the bad luck. So it's not a specific plan. We're going to see how gonna be the race on, and but just we want to be in the game.
And what was the bad luck yesterday? Can you tell me about
We
that?
have some mechanicals, and so the girls have lost some second, and we can't wait for them. And sadly, we needed to ask to Trixie, which is coming back from injury, to stay long over. So she had a bit effort yesterday. She didn't supposed to finish, and we need to ask her to do it. So that was a bit of trouble for us, but can happen. Is in the game. We are sportive enough. The opponent was better than us, and we're gonna play in the next days.
Well, really interesting to get that insight there. Very frustrating for Trek Segafredo. Today's a new day, but looking at those time gaps now as we come into stage 2, we've got Bowles as well and Sunweb along with Trek all over a minute down.
Yeah, I think it's not ideal losing over a minute in the first stage, especially a team time trial. It's one of those stages where it's frustrating because it's not just down to you, but it's part of racing, and you've got to kind of use it and learn from it and try and refocus for the rest of the race.
And talking of the rest of the race, very early days, as we mentioned earlier, as we come into today's stage, what can we expect to be dictated as to how it will play out based on those time gaps?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. It will depend how it's raced, but it's a short stage, and with the climb at the start, it'll be interesting to see if some of those sprinters can stay in there, and if not, they will be able to get back for the finish. But it's also not a very simple finish with a bit of a drag as well. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting race, and position is going to be really important today.
And there will be a lot of people looking at today's stage thinking, right, is this the opportunity to look to a stage finish, a stage victory? Won't it? Could we see a break go quite early potentially today?
Yeah, there's always opportunities for breakaways. Smaller Italian teams will always want to be in them and be represented there, but it'll be interesting to see how teams will be able to control it. I think from 7 riders in previous years to 6 riders, you lose a bit of that horsepower to maybe be able to bring a break back. So yeah, we'll just have to see how it's raced and see if those teams that have lost a big chunk of time will want to gain that back as early as today.
And we're looking at that quite significant Cat 2 climb, the first categorised climb of the Giro Rosa this year. There are plenty of opportunities though for things to come back on those valley roads.
Yeah, the climb is very early on, and there's still a long distance to the finish. So depending on what groups you're in, what's up the road and how everyone is working together, it will just depend how what group comes to the finish.
Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out on the road today. Another interesting and brilliant initiative happening in the women's peloton right now is the Cyclists Alliance. They're not only supporting riders in the bunch today, but for the future as well. We caught up with some of the riders on life after cycling and how this is helping to tackle the issues.
For example, there are some World Tour stage races where the prize money is really low, and if you have to compare the same level of the stage race of the men to the one of the women, it's even not comparable, because yeah, the prize money of the woman is really lower than the one of the men.
I think it's been a really positive time the last 10 years for women's cycling, or for cycling in general actually. The women's peloton is a lot faster, the races are a lot harder. We're having more races that are over a longer distance. We're having more races which are more intense for a longer period of time. And I think a lot more riders are taking professional cycling as a career, and there is a little bit more money in the sport, although the differences aren't spread quite across the level, but we are seeing a much higher level of the women's peloton in the races.
Well, great to hear from some of the riders there on the ground. Alice, how much have you seen improvements and changes in the women's peloton since you've been racing?
Yeah, there's been huge improvements with how teams are run, and I think my biggest observation would be probably the British women's peloton. The standard has gone up massively, and there's just a lot more women racing at a much higher level, so it's really good to see, and it's really good for the future of British cycling as well.
It certainly is. Alice, thanks for the insight as always. Now let's take a look at the highlights of Stage 2 from View to View.
Time now to take a look at everything that unfolded on Stage 2 at the Giro Rosa Ecrea. Another very warm start, and looking at that general classification after Stage 1, it is indeed Kasia Niewiadoma that sits at the top. Absolutely beautiful scenes that we're looking at the moment, really setting the scene for what's to come today. The theme of the 10-day stage race of the Giro being one that is fair to say pretty mountainous, and alongside me once again in commentary today is Alice Barnes, who was, I have to say, delighted at the end of yesterday's opening team time trial.
Yeah, it's lovely to see the girls do a really good ride in the team time trial, and with Kasia being in the leader's jersey, it always gives good motivation to come into today.
Valkar Silons signing on there, and we're just getting images of them having a lot of fun at the stage start. Big smiles from them.
yeah, it's a home race for them and some local roads for some, so they'll be really excited to get to stage underway and see what they can do out on the road.
And what is it like to really absorb the buzz out there? For you last year, what was the atmosphere like at things like the sign-on and down at the start?
Yeah, the atmosphere is really nice. Nice weather. I think it was quite a tough spring for a lot of people with the weather. So, yeah, to be in nice weather and nice scenery in Italy is yeah, really good for morale.
Home Italia, Basso Bikes signing on there. Just gives a sign of the magnitude, really, doesn't it, of the Giro Rosa on the calendar, being the longest stage race for the Women's World Tour peloton, and just how much the Italians love this race as well.
Yeah, Italians are always very proud people and proud of their country, of everything they stand for. So to be the only Grand Tour race and to really put on a good show for women's cycling is, yeah, really important to them.
So we see Ale Cipollini take to the sign-on here. We're followed by Movistar. And I think just hearing from some of the riders on the back of the opening team time trial, you know, a lot of riders saying they knew it would be tough. Actually, your sister Hannah saying this, but perhaps not quite that tough as it played out in that heat as well.
No, obviously team time trials are always really tough, and it depends who you are in that team. If you're one of the stronger riders, it's not as difficult, but also you're then relied on to do longer turns on the front and stronger pulls. So yeah, it's tough for everyone, and I think the weather and the terrain also made it a really hard day for everyone out there.
We saw Bigler signing on, and now followed by Sunweb and CCC. Liv just rolling down on the red carpet. Selfie stick out in action there, and it's been quite a change, hasn't it, in that sort of prevalence of social media age, that we get to see a lot more from the team. So do you do quite a lot of that yourself and your teammates?
Yeah, social media is important. At the end of the day, we're a billboard for our sponsors, and to really show what we get up to is important. I think the standout rider in our team is probably Tiff Cromwell. She's always on social media and she's well known for it. So yeah, it's important to show everyone what's going on behind the scenes and what people don't generally see.
Lisa Longo-Borghini in the best Italian blue jersey there. She'll be absolutely revelling in these crowds this morning. All the fans out in force for her, as we see your teammate Kasia Niewiadoma in the pink Maglia Rosa.
Yeah, it'll be a really special stage for her today to wear that, and I'm sure the girls are really up for it to maintain that lead in that competition, but also to chase other stage wins.
Amanda Spratt there, third last year at the Giro Rosa, lining up to sign on. Well, it is her teammate Annemiek van Vleuten that has the #1 on her back, and what a preparation she's done coming in this year.
Yeah, she always comes into the Giro with good form. It's one of her biggest races of the year, so she'll want to come in with that with her best form she can, with a lot of altitude training. And she's in the pink jersey, which is the leader of the Women's World Tour series overall.
We're getting a glimpse here at what is coming up today, 78.3 kilometres, view to view. And it's an interesting one, as are every stage this year. That profile starts with a significant ramp and a Category 2 climb, so a big opportunity there. Queen of the Mountain classification today, and then sort of that big descent into the valley roads, very undulating, and then once again a ramp up to the end. But yeah, I mean, what do you make of this? Because we're very likely to see a break go, but plenty of opportunities, it looks like, to bring it back.
Yeah, I think breaks may go on the first climb, and if not, the bunch will split quite a lot, and it will just be interesting to see who can hold the wheels of the peloton, and if they can't, if they'll get back on for the finish. But it's not a general sprint, it's a tough sprint as well, pretty hilly going into the finish, so it's not going to be straightforward at all today.
Well, centre of the screen as the flag drops. Kasia Niewiadoma in the Maglia Rosa, the resplendent pink. Looking very focused this morning, enjoying, reflecting yesterday after the team time trial and taking that jersey that really, really meant so much to her. I mean, you can always see her raw emotion and she was absolutely delighted. But head back down today, stage 2 and many, many stages to come.
Yeah, today is going to be really important to hold a good position. It's a short stage and not much time to correct anything, so you need to stay well positioned and also really hydrated with the heat that's out there today.
We saw a lot of those vests again that we chatted a little bit about yesterday with the ice and cooling riders down. But you said something before we came on air, actually, it was quite interesting because we talk about the budgets of some of the bigger teams being able to facilitate that kind of cooling system. But what can you do if you don't have it?
Yeah, so a lot of the time teams will get women's tights and fill them with ice, and then it will make sort of an ice ball, and then as it melts, you just have this small amount of the tight left back in your jersey. And you can get these at the start, and then also soigneurs can attach them to bottles, so you can keep using the ice and yeah, just maintaining a good core temperature, which is really important in this kind of racing. You can just see here how twisty all these roads are, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting race today. Not just a tough one with the climbing, but also technically.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, again, you look at that profile, you look at that ramp up, but the technicality as well is going to dictate so much of it. As we get a glimpse of the rider from Ale Cipollini and Lotto Soudal, and it looks to me like we have the big attack of the day. 2 riders away.
Yeah, so Romy Kasper from Ale Cipollini, she's actually 22 minutes and 36 seconds down on GC, so not one of the 4 riders that Ale Cipollini took to the line yesterday. And Kelly van der Steen, so from Lotto Soudal, she's only 2 minutes and 7 seconds behind, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this gap's maintained and what they are able to, the advantage that they're able to get over the peloton.
Yeah, so the state of play in that GC after the opening team time trial, of course, Kasia Niewiadoma in the pink jersey, but very much dictated by the 4 riders that went across the line for pretty much every team in that peloton. And of course, then you've got the remaining riders of those teams that have come further down in that classification. But of course, the GC contenders pretty much making it over with those front 4. A little bit of communication there going on, and that's so important, isn't it, when you're looking at a break and making it work, I guess, is how you communicate with your compatriot in that break.
Yeah, obviously the more riders in the break, the more riders that there are to gain that advantage, and you really need to work together, and it's always frustrating when you're in a breakaway and people come across to you and then they don't want to work with you and just expect to be dragged to the line. So yeah, really finding riders that are working together and can really pull that gap out.
Well, talking of working, it is Bigla that are drilling on the front here of the main peloton. You know, we've got these 2 riders up the road ahead, and you know, in terms of how much they're allowed and when that chase is really on, which it looks like Bigla are really doing at the moment, you know, what is that danger zone?
Normally you'd have a gap of, you'd probably allow a minute for 10 kilometres, but it's different. We've got to climb to the finish today, so the peloton can generally pull that back a lot easier, and these 2 riders aren't working together anymore and they seem to be attacking each other a bit. Just 15 kilometres to go with 1 minute and 7 seconds. So yeah, the gap is coming down, and we saw Bigla on the front there. Lizzie Banks was leading the way and really digging deep there. So yeah, they're just going there for the intermediate sprint. Kelly van der Steen took that with Romy Kasper, and then we'll see if these 2 can get back together again and start working again with that gap. But yeah, that looked like quite a tough sprint.
yeah, you could sort of see her after that intermediate sit up, look back, and presumably those two would be in the best interest of pairing up back together to work consistently again. Kasia Niewiadoma sat in second wheel at the moment. Very easy to spot in the pink of the Maglia Rosa.
Yeah, Aliona Amialusig on the front there. You can tell from her stripes on her arms, the Belarusian stripes from when she was national champion last year, and a really good, strong climber and can hold a really steady pace. So a great wheel for Kasia to follow here on this climb up to the finish and just keep her out of danger.
So we're looking at a time gap of 1 minute 5 seconds at the moment back to that peloton, who are you know, chasing hard, really working.
Yeah, the breakaway maintaining a good gap, just holding it steady, and Lucinda Brand leading the peloton over the intermediate sprint there, 5th, 3rd position.
Just seeing on this part of the course, a time to refuel, a time to take stock, which is very important to still think about, presumably.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hot day, and it's in a stage race. You have to be well fueled all the way to the finish and really be thinking about the next stages to come. Less than 15 kilometres to go now, and you can stop feeding from the car after 20 kilometres. So it's what you've got left with you. But we saw both riders there had 2 bottles on their bike, so plenty of fuel, and just really think about it on this downhill. But the peloton will generally roll down these kind of descents a lot quicker than the breakaway, so yeah, they really need to start gathering again, and on the flat just keep pushing on. But you also need to think about the next stages in terms of where you're using your energy. You don't want to give everything today. If it's not going to work out, then you don't want to be wasting that energy.
Absolutely. So the state of play on the road is Romy Kasper, Vali Cipollini and Kelly van der Steen of Lotto Soudal, and their time gap is just shy of a minute at the moment, as we see a bottle coming from the Lotto Soudal team car, just making sure that hydration is paramount in the conditions out here in the Italian heat. That peloton, in the interest of chasing this down, but like you say, been hovering around that point for a little while now, but just shy of a minute.
Yeah, so I said that you can stop feeding after 20 kilometres, but with high temperatures, it's up to the commissaire to decide if they want to extend that closer to the finish line, which they either have done, or that will be a fine for Lotto Soudal. It's difficult to know, but yeah, with it being super hot, you're drinking a lot more, and you could drink a bottle within 20 minutes, and that's obviously going to be longer to the line than that. So maybe the commissaires have opened that up, and we can actually see that this bunch has split. There's a bit of a gap, and it does look like it might come back together, but at the front there it seems maybe 30 riders together.
Yep. It looks that way, that we're seeing a big split in that peloton now. The big teams representing that we keep seeing the colours in the centre of screen, driving on the front, are the ones that have got those GC contenders in with an eye over this 10-day stage race at the Giro Rosa. Got Team Sunweb to the left of the screen. See Mitchelton Scott, their rider, Annemiek van Vleuten with the #1 on her back. Massive GC ambitions, of course, defending champion, and CCC Liv in the centre of the screen as well. An interesting team for a day like stage 2, because Ashley Mourman-Passio, absolute pleasure to watch climb, makes it look very light work, but Marianne Vos, her teammate, very successful at the Giro in previous editions, and a day like this could suit her.
Yeah, we know that she's been climbing well lately with her win in the second stage of Tour de Yorkshire, which was a really tough course, and she was able to make it across to the leading riders there, so she's climbing very well, and still having a good sprint on her at the end. So she is one of the best sprinters, I'd say, for this edition of the Giro, where there's less power sprinters, and she can really hold her own there. So yeah, CCC have a really strong team here to support Ashley both in GC, but Marianne in those more Ardennes style stages.
Once again, it is Team Sunweb drilling on the front of the peloton, which we did see a break in as we got a glimpse there. And this gradient is really, really ramping up now. It's one thing looking at these gradients on paper, but you can just see the bites now. And it is still Romy Kasper, Vali Cipollini and Kelly van der Steen of Lotto Soudal who are in that duo over breakaway out front. But this peloton is working very well together.
Around that group that we saw just off the back, they looked like they were just about to make contact again, and just as it ramps up again. So yeah, it's going to be a tough finish for those riders, and yeah, these two still just holding their gap.
And as we look to the sort of closing kilometres of this race, you know, there's switchbacks, there's the gradient to contend with. It's not a straightforward run-in by any means.
No, which will be why Sunweb are riding on the front here, not necessarily to bring the gap down, because with this hard finish and riders being out there for a long time, they will be tiring, but he'll be keeping their GC riders, such as Lucinda Brand, who was really strong in the Giro last year. It'll be keeping her out of trouble because we have got a lot of twists and turns on the way up this climb.
So then stage 2, view to view. 78.3 kilometres was the stage in its entirety, and now we have 11.5 kilometres to that finish line. We still have our 2 rider breakaway out front, and we'll confirm that time gap when we can. And here it is, 37 seconds. So that is coming down. We saw it get up over 2 minutes at one point and hovered around that minute, but now it is steadily coming down as we are on this final big ascent, the switchbacks, the gradient kicking up, and that group with a lot of interest behind.
Yeah, I think we might see this gap tumble down pretty quickly now. Maybe we'll see some more action from the peloton behind, riders that aren't so confident in their sprint to the finish and really wanting to get an advantage there, but this the pace in this peloton is pretty high, and yeah, it's Sunweb still leading the way.
It certainly is, and across the course of such a prestigious stage race such as the Giro, there are of course the big GC contenders, but those stage victories are so coveted and so important as well.
Yeah, the stage wins are what you can gain as a team if you aren't so confident with the GC ambition, and there's a lot more opportunities to win a stage win on the way, obviously, with 10 stages here. Coming away from a stage race with a stage win is a massive bonus, and everyone does want that. It's what you define as a successful stage race if you do have at least one of those victories there.
Certainly, and it does come down to looking at where those potential sprint finishes or indeed stage finishes could actually work for you, because with so much climbing, we are going to look to those absolute pure climbers later on in the week. But I guess it's looking at the stages that, you know, could possibly come back, that could be interesting for some of the riders here that aren't of that ilk of the absolute mountain goats.
Yeah, exactly. The overall victory can be defined by the mountain time trial that we have, and these more intermediate stages, I mean, we did say a ramp up to the finish, but it's more of a proper climb, and it's still going to suit more of the climbers. We've seen in the peloton there's still the likes of Amy Peters there, who has got a good sprint on her at the end, and yeah, you just see the peloton there in the background, so they can now see the breakaway, and I think this gap's come down by quite a lot, maybe within 20 seconds.
Yeah, Romy Kasper and Kelly van der Steen there. You can just see her looking over the shoulder, seeing that glimpse of the peloton coming up behind with a little bit of an unzip of that jersey there, just seeing how much that heat is beaming down. But they will know that the peloton are closing down now, and the peloton have them in their sights. You know, a brilliant time gap of over 2 minutes earlier today, but that has been steadily coming down with the interests of the peloton behind, as we just see it ramp up towards the finish today. Of course, stage 2 view to view, and we had that early ascent of the Col de Lis, and that peaked just 15 kilometres into the stage before dipping into those valley roads, still undulating, and then after the intermediate sprint just ramped up and up and up.
Yeah, so we can still see there's some swanias here on the side of the road, still feeding. Canyon there, they're still feeding on the side, so the feed has obviously been opened up with the weather being super hot, and yeah, the commissaire is really thinking about the health of the riders, which is really important and what you need on a stage race like this. And you can just see in the peloton there's not one team that's completely maintaining the pace with the twisty roads, and it's not really strung out, that no one's really driving the front. But Mitchelton here have now strung it out, and that's where you can see that it's not all across the road, and it's really thinning out now.
Yeah, Mitchelton Scott on the front of the peloton now in very neat formation. And of course, not only Annemiek van Vleuten, as we can just spot there, with the number 1 on her back, defending champion, a lot of GC interest, but we also saw her teammate Amanda Spratt on that podium overall last year. I mean, they've just got so much strength and depth in that team.
Yeah, they have, and Amanda Spratt's won a lot of races off her own back in the last couple of years, and someone that's really strong on the climbs as well. So great support ride for Van Vleuten, but can still maintain her sport overall as well, which is really great for the sponsors and great for confidence coming into the Giro, that they know they've got strength and depth.
So then, less than 10 kilometres to go here on stage 2 at the Giro Rosa Ecrea, and that gap is down now to 20 seconds, steadily coming down with the chasing peloton behind as we just see these roads undulate, and it's been a fascinating stage so far, this duo out for much of that. So we can see the peloton once again spread across the road with the big teams fronting the action. Trek Segafredo to the left of the screen. Got CCC Live we can spot, and it is Sunweb now with an injection of pace. We thought we might see some action as we knew that that time gap was coming down, perhaps interest of riders that aren't going to expect it to or want it to come all together to the line.
Yeah, it looks like Leah Kirchman, who's just taken a dig off the front there, and that will make all the other riders chase. You can see we've got a Trek rider there, it looks like, trying to come across, and that will really be dangerous for the peloton. So they'll try and get that on that as soon as they can. And yeah, you can see no one's letting that go. Looks like Ruth Winder, the one in her new American national jersey, which she'll really want to represent well here. So yeah, I think this gap's going to come down very quickly.
Yeah, as we can just glimpse that behind all playing out, and look over the shoulder there. Seeing Kirkman just bearing down and closing that gap down. And we've got a lot of newly crowned national champions in the bunch as well that we're looking out for this week too.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make the change in recognising the new riders in their jerseys and their team kits. So yeah, you just have to look out for that. But you can just see how much this peloton has strung out on this descent, and it's why it's so important to be well positioned going into it, because if there's any issues, any maybe small crashes, and you get held up, the race can go away from you, especially this far out. Obviously in the stage race, it's within 3 kilometres. If there's a technical issue or a crash, that you will be given the same time. But this far out, it's not far enough that you can really get back on terms and be in the main bunch, but you're also not protected by that rule at the same time. And you can just see how much harder it is for longer trying to come out of these corners, and the riders at the front freewheeling and really dictating the pace, and then the riders at the back having to really sprint out of the corners and yeah, move back up again. So positioning is really important in a final like this.
And this is the thing, isn't it? You know, you're always having to reposition, to think about that, because as you've just mentioned, it's so amplified the further back you go, and also there's that element of staying out of trouble and not only wanting to be well positioned, but not, you know, have to look at the implications if something goes wrong in that pack.
Yeah, and it's slowed again now when we hit the climb, but it's spread across the road, so it also makes it difficult to move up when there's not much space to do that. So teams will just find each other again and really gather themselves, and then start thinking about the finish and what tactics they're going to use, who they'll be riding for in the finish, if they're going to leave it to a sprint or if they want to send some people up the road.
Yeah, well, I mean, what are you anticipating at this point? Because we've seen a couple of riders go for that attack, get brought straight back. We've got those big teams, yours included, Canyon SRAM, with a lot of interest in not letting anything go at this point.
Yeah, to maintain the lead, Kasia will, or any of the top 4 girls, will just need to stay on the same time as the front of the race. But also, you want to go for another stage win, so you really need to think about what you can do with that. Depending who's here and who's confident for the finish, or if you just want to keep your powder dry and use it for, save yourself for another stage.
Looks like Erica McNaldy of WNT Rotor in the centre of the screen. Ashmi Monpassio to the left there, just sitting on her teammate. CCC Liv, of course, options in that team, but Monpassio, with the amount of climbing at the Giro, very, very well suited rider. Boels Dolmans there representing Anna van der Breggen again. Wasn't here at last year's Giro Rosa, but has won overall GC here twice in the history of the race. Can just hear the communication going on there, can't we?
Yeah, we can just see Bigler moving up in the white jersey, and they've also got the sprint leaders jersey there, so they're moving up to the front again after they did a bit of work earlier on to bring that break back. It's just one of those examples of when it slows up and the riders at the back are having to accelerate, and the riders at the front won't have even known that that happened. So it's just more energy that you're wasting if you're sat at the back. And yeah, just under 6 kilometres to go. It's really important to start moving up now.
And that must be one of the biggest challenges for the smaller teams in this race, is that without that necessary sort of rallying around of the rest of the team, they are going to naturally be on that back foot a little bit and having to work to overcome you know, the natural accelerations and decelerations at that point in the bunch.
Yeah, I think everyone's always trying to move up, and yeah, there's smaller teams there, but they will also be trying to move up at the same rate as everyone else, and it is more difficult to do, and you've just got to keep trying, really. Tiff Cromwell on the front, it's her birthday today, so I think this is her 12th Giro, and the last 12 years has basically been her birthday at the Giro, so it is a race she loves, but I'm sure she'd rather be sunbathing on the beach like she always seems to be doing.
Tiny bit of birthday cake maybe later?
Yeah, I think so.
Just a little bit. 5.4 kilometres to go here at stage 2 from View to View at the Giro Rosa Acrea. It is getting towards crunch time. We can see Trek Segafredo, Canyon SRAM, Movistar, all the big teams representing here at the front. Ali Cipollini have had a strong day in that 2-rider breakaway, and it is coming back for that finish.
It's been a really tough pace here all of the climb, but still a pretty big bunch coming to the line. A lot of riders that will be hoping that they can put a good sprint in and really hold their position. So some riders will just be dropping off the back towards the end, and just as this pace gets really high.
Yeah, as we mentioned, not a straightforward run into this finish in the way of sprint, but we know that the teams have basically been picked, those 6 riders have been picked knowing exactly what is in store this week. So you've got a different kind of rider that is going to very much suit a day like today.
Just attack there on the left from Ali Cipollini, and Lotto Soudal going with them. So yeah, an attack towards the finish, and this is what we would expect for the riders that don't really have confidence in the sprint, and it will just drag the peloton out a bit, and yeah, they'll hope that there'll be a bit of hesitation where they can get away and get a small gap.
Well, we're seeing these moves come thick and fast now. 4.3 kilometres to go to the finale of stage 2. Very van der Velde there as well.
And you can see that the peloton has sat up and no one wants to take this on and chase them down, and it's all now strung across the road. And the longer that takes to happen, and these riders keep pressing on, the bigger gap they can open up, and gives them that opportunity to get to the finish and get that stage win.
And it is all about opportunity, isn't it? Because once again, you can earmark who you think the stage suits, but there, you know, are so many situations out on the road where we see that anything can happen.
Yeah, and we have Lucy Kennedy that's come across from Mitchelton Scott, so she's a really good climber, really strong, and that is a good tactic from them because it will drag other teams out to chase them down, and then Van Vleuten or Spratt can sit in there and really follow the wheels, and it's up to the other teams to bring this back.
Yeah, so Lucy Kennedy, Mitchelton Scott, of course, the teammate of Annemiek van Vleuten, touted by many, many people as the favourite coming into this year's Giro, and Amanda Spratt was third on that podium last year as well. So a look over the shoulder there from Kennedy. She's injected that pace. She wants to make it hard, and Mitchelton Scott are playing their game plan very, very well.
And you can see that they're not getting too much of a gap. It's Aliona on the front again to bring this down, and then you can just see that Van Vleuten there is just sat happy in third place with Spratt there on the right as well. So it has left it to the other teams, and riders can't do everything. So Aliona there, she's put in a big effort, and then the bunch could slow down again because then no one's taking it up, and it's all that stop-start and pace where these riders can get away.
Lucy Kennedy there, Mitchelton Scott once again just drilling that pace. Little look over her shoulder to see the state of play. And as you mentioned there, Van Vleuten sat in a very comfortable position. So that was Julie Vedvector from Lotto Soudal there.
These two riders will work really well together, and they'll want to go to the line, and they're pulling out a gap on these two chasers, and we'll be within the last 3 kilometres now, so anything can happen, and some more hesitation in the peloton can really see that gap be strung out.
So Lucy Kennedy, Mitchelton Scott, Julie Vedvector of Lotto Soudal there. These two riders making it very difficult.
And with a lot of twists and turns, it's quite quick that they are out of sight, so that really works to their advantage. But Lotto Soudal rider doesn't seem to want to come through and do much work, and it's up to Lucy Kennedy a bit more here.
Yeah, you can see Lucy Kennedy just flicking the elbow there as we come into less than 3 kilometres to go now. .8 kilometres to the finish of stage 2 here at the Giro Rosa, the stage from view to view in its entirety. 78.3 kilometres on this very hot day once again in Italy. A lot of GC interest in here, a lot of people going for a stage win as well, and we have mentioned the rider from CCC Live, Marianne Vos. A stage like today suits her very much. We've seen them en masse at the front. We've seen Lucy Kennedy of Mitchelton Scott injecting that pace to work for her teammates who are in there with that overall contention throughout this year's stage race. And another flick of the shoulder there from Lotto Soudal.
Sala Cipollini that's brought that back with Soraya Paladin, and they lost quite a lot of time yesterday in the team time trial, which will be a big disappointment for them. They finished 15th, 2.5 minutes down, so yeah, they'll really need to keep focusing on maintaining time and not losing any more time, as Paladin can be a good rider for GC. But we've seen it all come back together now, but it's still very strung out with it dipping down in these final kilometres.
final kilometres now, all very strung out, the bottles being discarded there, and the stage of players who came in that general classification. It was Canyon SRAM Racing, of course, that led the way yesterday in that team time trial. They were followed by Bigler Pro Cycling. All of these teams getting 4 riders over the line, giving that state of play in the general classification. It was CCC Liv that were third yesterday, putting them in that running order. Ashley Monmouth, Passio, Marianne Vos. They both have big interests today as well. And then it was Mitchelton Scott behind them, and Bowles Diamonds followed by Trek Segafredo. They had a few issues yesterday, a bit of a frustrating day, but all these big teams up there in contention today.
Lucy Kennedy is keeping it lined out as Amanda Spratt and Van Vleuten were both up there really well. So if she keeps it strung out, they can't get swamped and they can maintain their position well. And saw Amanda there on her radio just giving instructions to do that. Taylor Wiles here putting in a big attack, which they might have had a look around and seen that there are sprinters, the likes of Marianne Vos is still there, and maybe they don't fancy their chances against her. So really using that initiative to put in a big attack in the last few kilometres. 600 metres now to go, so
well, we saw the riders come under that 1K to go banner, just 0.6, 0.5 kilometres to go. Taylor Wiles with a grit of the teeth, injecting that pace. Big attack there from her, and it is all back together with just 500 metres to go to the line.
Vos there sat in third wheel, so she'll be really happy with that with 400 metres to go. It'll be a tough uphill finish with a lot of twists and turns, so she just needs to maintain that. And Van Vleuten coming to the front with Spratt on her wheel, so it's not a simple sprint, not flat, no lead outs really happening, and uphill, so that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, not the kind of traditional lead out that we would expect to see on perhaps a flatter, more simple run into the finish, but today is anything but simple as this gradient bites up to the line. We've got the interest of the big teams. You can see Mitchelton Scott, Van Vleuten there at the centre of the screen. We've got CCC Liv, Marianne Vos, a perfect finish for her. Amanda Spratt to the right of the screen.
Kasia Nuadoma just making sure she's staying up there, not losing any time at all. And I think we're just going to wait now until the sprint unfolds within the final few hundred metres.
We are very, very close to the conclusion of today's stage 2 as we see the riders wind it up for this final run into the line, and it's Vos that takes it on from the front. Marianne Vos, not an ideal run into this race with some injuries, but she's back to her best. There is a gap behind her as she chases into this final run-in. She has time to sit up and punch the sky, and it's Vos that takes stage 2 here at the Giro Rosa Ecrea, as she was followed by Annemiek van Vleuten and Lucinda Brand.
A lot of splits there coming into the final, which will be interesting to see if those gaps are given. But we've seen Kasia still up there, and hopefully it'll be on the same time as everyone else. But really interesting finish there, very twisty, so it was important to take it on from the start and really use those corners to get a gap.
What a finish, what an incredible finish to stage 2, view to view here at the Giro Rosa, and you can just see what that means to Vos. Big smile over the line.
Good second place there from Van Vleuten as well, with Lucinda Brand and Van der Breggen coming in fourth. So a Dutch top 4, and you can really see that these riders that we're expecting to be there, up there in the overall, are all really making sure that they're up there for every stage and staying out of trouble.
Yeah, Anna Van der Breggen, interesting. Bowles Dolman says she led out quite early there, didn't she? Keeping herself up the front, out of trouble, and a solid finish there. But like you say, just dictating the favourites like Van der Breggen, like Van Vleuten in this overall battle for the Maglia Rosa. Erica Magnaldi there for WNT as well.
Amanda Spratt up there as well, so that'll be really important for her to stay up there and keep on good time. Elisa Longo Borghini as well, and Cecile Ludwig.
Marianne Vos, CCC Liv, stage 2. She takes that crown here. She'll take to the podium very shortly. So confirmation of that result, it was Vos, followed by Annemiek van Vleuten. Lucinda Brand there in third, and she was followed by Anna van der Breggen. So that means in general classification...
Of course, it's really nice to win well, the first stage after the TTT, and we had already a good day yesterday, and this finish seemed to suit me, but still you never know how it will go in the first stage. But the team did a good job to get me in front, to keep me in front, and yeah, then it was a really nice finish.
That was actually a big bad luck because I hit my knee pretty hard, so I hope everything is okay, but I could feel it throughout the stage. Hopefully, fortunately we have a lot of good physios with us, so I do believe that they will take a good care of me and I will be ready for next stages.
What were your feelings in the last part of the stage about the knee?
Yeah, it was hard. The pace was pretty hard and kind of hectic because peloton was still pretty big, so it was difficult to move up to the front. Yeah, it was a very nice stage. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed despite this little crash.
Manaras CCC Liv takes to the podium after a beautiful and stunning victory on stage 2 at the Giro, Rosa. Big smiles from Vos on the podium. She certainly knows how to perfect the champagne spray by now. Plenty of practice.
Yeah, it's something she'll be really happy with. Coming here, and she's had a busy June as well. And really making sure she gets her stage win in there easy.
So, Kasia Niewiadoma once again in the pink jersey, saying that she hit her knee out there, not ideal.
Yeah, we didn't see anything of the crash, but yeah, it's not ideal having a small crash, but she'll come back from it fine. She'll be looked after well, and yeah, she'll be fine.
And Vos back on the podium there, taking the classification jersey.
Young rider jersey there for Julie Lebeau from Team Sunweb.
Brilliant to see the white jersey for the young rider classification. Sophie de Vos there. So she has taken that mountain classification. And Elisa Longo Borghini takes the blue. Just getting a little look back at the highlights from today, with the peloton rolling out here in front of incredible crowds in view for stage 2, as they were about to embark on 78.3 kilometres of racing. And that breakaway duo was established by Romy Kasper of Ali Cipollini and Kelly van der Steen of Lotto Soudal. See Kasia Niewiadoma, of course your teammate Alice in the pink jersey there.
Yeah, you can see now there on her knee that she's got a cut there and it's bleeding quite a lot. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see when that crash happened.
Yeah, of course you'll be having a little chat with her, I'm sure, as soon as you can, getting that insight from the team as to what happened out on the road that we potentially didn't see there.
Just the closing stages of the race here, where we saw the break be ruled in quite quickly by Leah Kirchmann from her small attack from the peloton.
Yeah, big attack there from Leah Kirchmann, and that was the point that this duo was caught. And then we saw moves go all over the place, and Lucy Kennedy of Mitchelton Scott. A lot of work towards the closing kilometres, and then it was Anna van der Breggen that took things on from the front, and then Marianne Vos pounced with the sprint that we know she has. And look at that absolute confidence and conviction, with the gap opening up behind her. An absolutely stunning, dominant, strong run into the line as she just made that final turn and had time to sit up for a brilliant celebration over the line. Van Vleuten followed her to the line in that distinctive World Tour Leaders jersey. And it was indeed Lucinda Brand, confirmed to take third.
A sprint that really does suit Vos, being really strong and having a lot of speed and really using that in those final corners.
So, confirmation of what that's done to the general classification. It is Kasia Niewiadoma that sits at the top. She took that pink jersey yesterday and it remains on her shoulders as we'll head next into stage 3.
Stage profile could potentially suit CCC Liv's Marianne Vos, and when she knows that she's going to go for it, I mean, she's pretty unstoppable. That was stunning.
Yeah, it was a really impressive finish, and she'd obviously looked at the course pretty well before and really knew that she had to lead into those final corners.
Well, it was a superb stage 2 victory. Let's hear from her now.
When we came in, we did a reckon with the bus, with our bus. So it seemed to be a real climb, but when the riders are still fresh, then the speed is really high. So we came in with a high speed until this final kilometer, and then it was the climbers, the pinchers, the GC riders that were together for the stage win, and yeah, it was a really nice finish.
Well, such a dominant display on that run into the finish, which we said time and time again was not going to be a straightforward one.
No, it wasn't straightforward with the climb and with the twist of the climb as well, and there was a few attacks in the final kilometres, but Marianne really kept her cool and just followed the wheels and made sure she was really well positioned.
And your teammate Kasia Niewiadoma still in the overall pink leaders jersey. We'll chat about that in just a moment, but we caught up with her at the team bus.
I mean, for me, it's like we take day by day. To be honest, I'm not focused on GC. It's of course wonderful to be wearing pink. It was a nice surprise yesterday, but yeah, I'm realistic. I know that Annemiek is much stronger than me, so all what I can do is just like enjoy riding those stages with my team and try to get more stage victories. And yeah, of course it feels nice to be ahead of them. To just, I'm gonna just enjoy those moments together with my team.
Brilliant to see Kasia still in the Maglia Rosa there, but of course we don't really know what happened out on the road. Not an ideal day by the looks of it.
No, she said she's had a crash and she has hit her knee, which we did see a bit of blood on her knee. So yeah, not ideal, but I'm sure she'll be fine, and she managed to finish the stage and still up there and only losing a second to Vos. So yeah, still got a healthy lead in that jersey.
Yeah, and that is the important thing looking forward. And let's talk a little bit about the general classification. Of course, your teammates 1, 2, 3 at the moment after a very strong opening team time trial.
Yeah, all the main riders are up there in the GC, and yeah, obviously having lost a bit of time yesterday in the team time trial, but it's still all to play for, and there's a lot of tough stages to come, and yeah, it's good to have 3 Canyon SRAM riders up there still. Yeah, and Tripp Ludwig is in 4th place at the moment. I mean, I can't wait to see her be interviewed at some point because we all love it, don't we? Yeah, she'll for sure be quite active in the coming days, especially with those hilltop finishes, and really be getting involved in those. Yeah, as you mentioned there, a lot of the contenders we'd expect to see playing the long game over the 10 days up there. Anna van der Breggen 11th in that GC at the moment, Van Vleuten up there as well. So that's very interesting to see how that plays out. And in terms of looking forward to stage 3, we've had a look at that profile. What do you make of it? I mean, could it be a potential similar style to today? Yeah, it looks quite a simple profile, but I think the kick up to the finish is going to be really hard, and a really long finish as well, maybe with some steeper gradients in there. So it's going to be a tough finish, and I think more split up than it has been today, as today there was quite a big bunch still coming to the line.
Absolutely, can't wait to see it in action tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here alongside me for the first 2 stages of this year's Giro. Good luck with the rest of the season, and we'll hand the baton over now to Iris Schlappendale, who will join me tomorrow for stage 3. Join us at the same time then. Bye bye.